So cool. So let's get started. Good morning. I'm Shrikala. I am one of the co-founders of CrackVerbal, and I welcome you all to this webinar of our ISB success story. This year has been, great for CrackVerbal in terms of people getting into top schools from various schools. And obviously, pretty much people applying to ISB being one of the major number of people from India and Bangalore, right? So what I would want to do is let me just get started and give you some background on how we'll go about this session. There are some ground rules that I want to talk about in this session. We've made sure we have structured this webinar very well so that it makes sense for all of you who are participating. So all of you, if you have any specific questions, you could ping separately on your question window, or you could just put it on the chat window so that I can help address those questions. We would want to make questions slightly more generic rather than more personal or profile based. The focus of today's webinar is to talk about Sreyoshi and her MBA journey to ISB, right? So we'll focus more on every aspect of her journey so that you guys can understand what it takes to get into schools like ISB, right? Just giving you a quick background about myself. I'm the COO and co-founder of CrackVerbal, like most of you. So how many of you are here from Bangalore? If you could just put your hands up, or just put in the city you are attending from, that would be great. Just type it on the chat window of the city where you're attending from. Mumbai, Chennai, Gurgaon, Delhi, Pune, Hyderabad. Awesome. That's really great. Kochi, Udaipur. Wow. Boston, Coimbatore. Great. So that's a great mix of people from, I would say all around the world. So welcome you all again. Let me just give you a brief background about myself. Like there's someone from China too. Great. So I was a software engineer, like, quite a few of you attending this webinar. I started my career with HP. I worked with HP for around 7.5 years before I moved on to join CrackVerbal. I'm also the fellow of ISB Goldman Sachs Women Entrepreneur Program. I'm part of the Cherry Bear Foundation. Apart from handling the admissions and the technology aspect at CrackVerbal, I also take care. I'm also a mentor to a lot of entrepreneurs who are looking at, getting help for their businesses. A little bit about our speaker today, Sreyoshi Dasgupta, an admit to ISB 2019. Welcome, Sreyoshi. Let me just unmute you for a second. Welcome, Sreyoshi.
Hi, Shrikala. Thank you for having me here.
Great. So I'll just give you a brief background about Sreyoshi before she talks about herself, in a couple of minutes. Sreyoshi is a BTech from Electronics and Instrumentation Engineering from SRM. She's been an SAP consultant with EMI. She has a work experience of 2.7 years, and she applied with a Gmat score of 700, right? So let's get started. Let me just give you a little bit of background about CrackVerbal for people who have maybe attending for the first time. So we've been mentoring students for years now, and we have helped students getting into top schools from various part of the world. And so we help people with GMAT, GRE, and with their masters and MBA plans. Some great mentors. So this is a small number of mentors that I've put in on the slide. There are a lot many more. You can actually go onto our CrackVerbal website and have a look at them. These are all people from various aspects of the industry. So for example, if you look at Sudhanshu, who's an MBA from Judge, is from a completely different industry. He's from the energy retail kind of an industry. Shrikant Singh works for Amazon. Rahul is a marketing geek. Namrata is a brand manager at one of the top FMCG firms. Aruna is a management consultant from Wharton. We have Sanadi, who's a sales performance head at LinkedIn. So these are the kind of people who are part of this program. Akshay, who's from Berkeley, who's a a very passionate on green energy guy, and he worked with Cisco post his MBA as a product manager. And obviously Arun, I guess you all know him very well, right? So these are our set of mentors. We have many more. Like I said, you can just go through our CrackVerbal mentors website and get an idea of who are the other mentors who help you through this process. Here are a few free resources for you to get started. You must go to the CrackVerbal YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com/CrackVerbal videos. There are great playlists of MBA essays analysis of most top schools. We are looking at adding a lot more this year. So you have, what it takes to get into Ross or Johnson or Kellogg or ISB. Some great resources, webinars, recording of webinars, ebooks, videos, essay analysis, what it takes, to get into top school. Here's the ISB essay analysis blog. It also tells you the mistakes you need to avoid. For each and every school, what we've made sure is we've gone very much in detail to give you all an understanding of how you should actually frame your essays. Essays are no more of how we used to write when we were in school or college. This is a lot more. It's almost like marketing yourself very well. So I think this is a very important aspect of your MBA journey, right? So just make sure you go through, all these resources so that you get an understanding of what it takes to get into a top school, right? There is a free profile evaluation option on our website. Please go ahead, go to crackverbal.com/applications and go to MBA profile evaluation. Get your profile evaluated so that you also get to know what else you need to do in the next couple of months to or highlight to make your candidature stronger when you're applying to any top school, right? So this will be of great help. Get in touch with a top expert so that you get an understanding of what it takes, right? Cool. So let's get started. Let me just unmute Sreyoshi so that she can, talk about her journey. Welcome again, Sreyoshi. Thank
Hi.
you so much for joining us. And I'm sure all the people who are attending this webinar will get a lot of inspiration and, understanding of what it takes to get into a school like ISB. So let's get started. So, I've kind of created a format so that, you can we can follow this flow, and in meanwhile I'll also take up questions if people have any. So we'll just get started. Sreyoshi, if you could just give us a
Sure.
little bit about your background and what you do, and last two and a half years of your work experience.
Yeah. So I graduated from SRM University in 2016, and through campus placements, I got the opportunity to work with EY. So when we joined EY, we were not told exactly which domain we'll be working in, like usually how freshers are. And I was lucky enough to actually work in a pretty good domain of SAP as an SAP consultant. So it is a technical role basically, but then the good thing about the role was there was a lot of client interaction which was happening. So what my role entailed was I was working in the extended warehouse management part of SAP. So all these big companies, for example, I was working with Miller Coors, which is one of the biggest breweries in the world. They have a very huge warehouse in US, which is actually almost equivalent to 3 football fields. And what we do is we customize the warehouse. We there's the whole process of how, so there's a brewery, how the beer is, getting made, how it is getting shipped, how we are storing it, how it is being sent out to the customers. It is a very huge process. And the project that this project, the Miller Coors project for EY, was one of the biggest projects. And I was very lucky that I got to work with it from, the beginning to the end. It was a complete end-to-end implementation. So that was one of the highlights for me in my, work profile. So that was a very big, advantage for me. And there was a lot of learning curve for me as well. But of course, it was a little bit on the back end. It was a technical role. And I really wanted to understand more. And of course, supply chain is a huge, there are a lot of opportunities. And for me, being a specific uh, EWM consultant, it's becoming a little, niche. And the more you get specialized in it, the more it is difficult for you to, explore other areas of management. So, that's when I thought that, yeah, let's go about and, think of an MBA, because an MBA will definitely, open different doors for me. I'll be able to understand different aspects of business better. So I felt, and I actually discussed it with my manager beforehand, before I, thought about it. And I asked him that, how about I stay here and try to move into different domains? And the response he gave me was, an EWM consultant is very rare. And I have started my journey as an EWM consultant. And there are very few people who are, as such. So he directly told me that it would be very difficult for me to shift into a different domain, because I have already started getting specialized in one uh, consultants, like EWM consultants. So then I thought that, I told him that then I think I'll probably go for an MBA, and he was quite supportive. And of course, it depends from person to person. But then I felt it would be better to be open with my organization, and my manager, so that even they can plan beforehand if I do leave for my MBA.
So,
So
Shreyashi, I have one question here. So, in terms of your undergrad background, were you always a good student, 10th, 12th graduation? Were you worried about, so when you started thinking of an MBA, were you worried about your undergrad marks, or you were, how were your credentials when it came to, your marks in undergrads and, 10th and 12th?
yeah, so my 10th, 12th are fairly okay, like both are in my 90s. But the thing is, in the MBA journey, they never really focus much on the 10th, 12th. So that was like they start seeing from college. And my disadvantage was I didn't uh, do anything stellar as such in college, which kind of, I was really worried about that, because if I write about 10th, 12th, it's quite like it's 7, 8 years back. It's quite outdated, as a lot of people would say. So I was worried about not so much about my marks, more about my extracurriculars and stuff of that sort. Yeah. So that was a
Okay,
little
great.
bit of concern. Yeah.
Right. So I just want to, put one point, from Shreyashi over here is for those who are worried about, your 10th and 12 marks, don't get worried about it, especially when you're applying for a PGP kind of a program. I think they want to focus more on what you have done and, maybe your undergrad marks and obviously your GMAT score, right? So
Yeah.
what is more relevant and recent is what they would be, more worried about, right? So,
Yeah. Exactly.
Shreyashi, you mentioned you spoke to your, manager about your doing an MBA. So, why did you feel at this point, like, you were just 2.5 years into the industry? Why did you feel, now was a good time for you to do an MBA?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, that I was feeling that I will be, limited to this role for a long time if I continued further. Like it was already 2.5 years, and I always wanted to. There was no decision-making role for me. It was always, the responsibility was handed down. Even if I had some inputs, which I felt that sometimes I did want to know how the big decisions were being made, but I was not involved in them. So I always felt that in order to reach that point, an MBA will be a fast track, basically. Of course, I can do the same if I continue in the job, probably 10, 15 years down the line, probably I will reach there, but there's no guarantee for it. And again, if I do continue here, again, that's the thing, right? 10, 15 years down the line, I will be against a very specialized consultant in extended warehouse management, which I was not sure about it, because I haven't experienced other things. Like when I joined EY, I was given this role which I liked, but I was not sure of what else is there. So I wanted to explore, the other aspects of it, which an MBA will help me do.
Right, right, perfect sense. So, so what was your first step? Like, what when you start, when that came, my thing came to your mind of, okay, now I need to do an MBA. What was your first step, and how did you go about it?
Yeah. So actually, initially I did give CAT once, and I just gave it, for the sake of it. So yeah, 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. So I gave CAT, but then I realized that it was not my forte, and it didn't really go as per plan. And I did see a few of my friends who were in the same boat, and they had scored amazingly well. 99.75 and 99.5 up, and they were really struggling. And I thought about it, and I thought probably this is not the way to go. And I always wanted to, get an MBA from ISB. ISB had always been one of my, top schools to look at. But then, of course, I had to give GMAT for that. And it was a big decision because targeting, and I didn't really want to move to US or Canada, or, I didn't want to move abroad. I was probably looking at Singapore and India. So probably only three schools which are on the top come to mind through Gmat: ISB, NUS, and NTU. And it's a big risk that I was taking because I was spending a lot of money on Gmat and a lot of investment of time as well, not just money. I'll be spending almost more than a year on the applications and, preparing for it. And, it's just targeting three schools. So I had to make sure that it goes right, and I had to, put my everything into it. So that's when I thought that, yeah, let's give Gmat. And I, started looking at different coaching institutes because GMAT is a completely different. There's a different way of thinking for GMAT, which is not we are not used to it. Like I took a demo class at CrackVerbal. I remember the first time, and it was an RC session. And the first thing that CrackVerbal was teaching was how to read, differently for GMAT, which I'd never thought of before. We never think of it. We're not used to skimming passages. We are not used to, focusing on those highlight words and stuff. So the day I, went through that demo class, I was like, yeah, this is the kind of guidance I need. These are the tricks which which will help me move towards a good GMAT score. So that's when I decided that, yeah, okay, CrackVerbal is it. So yeah.
So, Shrishi, one question over here. This is again something that most of the people face, right? Along with work,
Yeah.
especially with the, quite a demanding work at ENY. How did you manage your preparation? And, if you could just give us a little bit of background on, how much time did you take, spending on your preparation? Like every day did you study, or how did you plan it? And just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I used to have my CrackVerbal classes on the weekend. So that was, I think, 3 hours each Saturday and Sunday. So, and that was very helpful. Like that used to be my base. So whatever I used to study that week, and I remember that you had a, timetable for us, which, what are the topics which we have to complete by week 1, week 2, which was extremely helpful. I remember taking a printout and, sticking it on my cupboard so that I look at it every day and make sure that I'm on track. So I used to spend almost 1.5 to 2 hours every day if I could, minimum, that's for sure. And on weekends, my classes of 3 hours, and then I used to come home and do whatever assignments were given, another 2, 3 hours on weekends. I used to try doing a little more on the weekends. And yeah, usually I used to study at night because, that's the time you get. So again, it depends on person to person, and the work life depends on the timings. So yeah.
Right. So there's one thing I would want to, talk about, over here is when you actually start preparing for your GMAT, I think one thing you have to, figure out is what works best for you, whether you're a morning person or an evening person. Like Shreyoshi said, she was more comfortable studying in the evening. So she picked up evening. And whenever you actually start doing something like this, it is more important to make it like a habit. It's
Yeah.
almost like, it should fall in place in your current schedule rather than suddenly getting up at 4 o'clock and starting to study, which might not be a sustainable method to do, right? Or,
Yeah.
staying awake till 4 or 5, or, with a full-time job, I think it's, it's not a sustainable method to do. So try to fit in into your regular schedule, which will be slightly more sustainable and something that you'd be able to do better, right, Shreyoshi?
Yeah, exactly. And plus we have to maintain a work, like we can't just ignore work completely. We are supposed to work, and we are supposed to do our best there. So the best thing is to do is, create a specific timetable. That's what I used to do. Like maintain a timetable, create goals per week, and plus a few long-term goals. Like, okay, by the end of this month, I'm supposed to be here. So you are on track. Otherwise, it's very easy to, keep postponing your GMAT, and you can just keep saying that, okay, not, I have a lot of work this month. Why don't I give it next month? It's very easy to do that, to procrastinate. But it's better to, keep some goals for yourself and try following it. It's not possible to follow it to the T, but at least, approximately you can make it up in a few weeks or something. So you're you don't miss your deadlines, at least. Like that's the main thing. Like a lot of people tend to procrastinate and think that, okay, R1 it's okay, we'll go to R2. Okay, not R2, we'll go to R3, and that's not a good thing to do. It's better to stick to your timetable.
So, Shreyoshi, when you started your preparation in the, in the first week or month itself, you put in 1 or 2 hours a day. Was that how you planned it out,
No,
or did
initially
you
it was a bit
gradually
harder. Yeah.
increase?
Uh,
Sorry.
uh, yeah, yeah. Please, you were saying something.
No. So, did you gradually increase the time you spent on your prep, or you could start with 1 or 2 hours every day to begin with?
No, no. Initially, it was definitely harder because grasping the concepts, getting the hang of studying, it takes a little bit of a time. So initially, it was just I just made sure that I have to sit with it no matter for however long I can. And of course, the stamina, it grows over time. So it was never, I never started with 2 hours a day. It was gradual over a month, I guess. It took me a month to, get into the flow. But yeah, just make sure that you're sitting with it because, yeah, it's important. There are so many things in Gmat which are small, crucial things which if you don't, you have to get the hang of it. So, yeah.
Right. So, did you take a diagnostic test before you actually got started?
Yes, I did. That was suggested by CrackVerbal as well. So to take a diagnostic test, which didn't go very well, but yeah, I could understand what my weak points are and what are the areas which I'm not strong at. So it was helpful, and I think I scored somewhere around a 550. I'm not sure, which was not. It was very demotivating, but then it was assuring to see that the people at CrackVerbal, everyone was like, it's okay, everyone starts there, and it's okay to start at a 500ish level and then move up. So yeah, they were very
Right.
helpful in that, like, yeah.
So one thing I want to tell to all of you over here. So let me just take a quick poll just to understand, what exactly. So if you all know, ISB accepts both GMAT and GRE scores. So I'm just putting this poll. I just want to understand who all are planning to take GMAT, GRE, or people who have not even decided. So I see almost 90% of the people looking at taking GMAT. That's great. A couple of people around 8% who are looking at GRE. So I'm glad everyone's at least understands what it takes, and there's no undecided person over here. So that's definitely good to see, right? So great. So going ahead, back to Shreyoshi over here. So you took your GMAT. So I see that you took your. When was the last attempt that you had for your GMAT?
My last attempt
What
was
what month was it?
sorry.
Sorry, when was it? You took it in October.
Yes. So the first time I took it in August, and then I took it again in October. Yeah.
Okay. So between the first and the second, what did you do differently?
So I sat down with Aditya, one of your mentors from CrackVerbal, and I actually went to the center and I sat down with him, and we get that report, right? I forgot what the report name
Uh,
is after you get the
ESR, ESR. It's called an enhanced score report.
Yes. So I took a printout, I took the ESR, I sat down and we analyzed what went wrong in the first attempt. So there was a bit of a timing issue with me. Like towards the end, I tended to rush and I did tend to make a lot of mistakes towards the end, which you can see in the ESR. So that was one thing that I felt was, which led me to a lower score than what I had expected. So that was the first thing which I realized. The second thing was you get an 8-minute break in between sections, right? So, and you don't have a watch with you, you just have a clock in the center. So the first time what had happened was I was too busy eating my chocolates and I forgot to keep a track of the 8 minutes, and I did lose almost 2.5 minutes in my verbal section, which is a very big, it's almost 2 to 3 questions of your time. And it comes on your screen when you start the section that you have lost these many minutes and you will, start, you'll be getting these many minutes less. And that freaked me out because seeing that, I kind of panicked. So I made sure that the next time I keep, I keep the time in mind and I, make sure I do everything within those I won't even give it 8 minutes, within 6 minutes. And then because while you're going inside, they will again pat you down, check everything, take your, fingerprint. So again, that will take some time. So you have to keep in mind all that. So those were a few learnings. There were a lot more, but those were a few things which I understood from my first attempt, and which I made sure that I don't, make the same mistakes again. So yeah.
Okay. So, once you took the GMAT, you got a great score. So, what was on your mind post that?
Um, I was happy with this 700, but still, having a comparatively lesser work experience than the average at ISB, which is almost 4.5 to 5 years, I was a little concerned because there were people with 5-6 years experience and higher score than me. So I was a little concerned about it, but I thought, because I was running out of time, it was October and my deadline was in December. So I thought, retaking GMAT really didn't make sense for me
Hello.
because, hello?
We lost you, Shreyoshi. Are you there?
Yeah, hi. Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Hello, Shreyoshi.
Hi. Hello? They're sending that they can share a screen. Hello?
Yeah, Shreyoshi, go ahead. I'm sorry. I think there's a problem with my internet. Go ahead. You were talking about your GMAT.
Yes. So the only concern that I was having was having a lower work experience than the average of ISB, which is almost 4.5 to 5 years. And I knew people who had a higher GMAT score than me and a higher work experience. So I did, like, it didn't make sense for me to retake my GMAT again because I just had 2 months to work on my applications. And everyone told me that, the GMAT is just, 40% of your journey. The rest of it is totally on your essays. So I thought, okay, I just took a decision on focusing on my essays and trying to make them as, as good as possible. And I spent 2 months on those two essays. And, I thought, I think that would be, and it did pay off in the end, even though I spent a lot of time in them. And of course, I had the help of Sanidhi from CrackVerbal. So it was a very I was scared about it because of my work experience. So yeah.
So, Shreyoshi, when you actually, once your GMAT was done and you started, okay, now I want to get onto my application. So, you went to the ISB website. I'm sure you created a login and you looked at your essay. So, what was your first thought of evaluating whether you really require a help from a mentor?
Okay. So the first essay was on diversity and what will you be bringing to the table, at ISB. And being an engineer, being from a fairly like a technical consultant, again falling into the IT background, I started thinking. I think I took a week to, assimilate my thoughts and, try to jot down things. And I did write a, sort of an essay, a first draft of it. And it looked like a resume which was turned into, words, and it was terrible. And I thought, no, this is not how I'm going to do it. And I tried thinking on my own, and I was like, no, it's going to take I was not sure which direction to go in firstly. Like, how do I think on how am I different? I don't know what are the questions I have to ask myself in order to do that. So then I started talking to a few different, agencies who provide these helps. But then finally I decided on CrackVerbal because firstly I had worked on with you guys for, for my GMAT coaching. So I already had an idea, a fair bit of idea of the people I'll be working with. And then everyone was very supportive. So then I, decided on going with CrackVerbal.
So, what was the role of the mentor in your application? So, talk about your discussions
Yeah,
that you had with her.
sure. So the first discussion I had with her, it was she got to know my background and everything. She tried to understand me, what all, it was just me talking, and it was her trying to understand my story. And then there were a lot of questions that she asked me, which I had never thought of. Questions like things which have changed me. So she asked me to, think of incidents and think of different aspects of my life which have, shaped me to be a person that I am. Things which I've, so her way of approaching the essay was completely different than what I would have thought of. In my head, my essay was very bland. Nobody would really want to read it. But the way she was, making me think, it was not her giving me ideas. It was her asking me the questions. And those questions were making me think in a different direction. And then, I was discussing with her and she was like, yeah, I think that makes sense. So it was, her guiding me into the right direction. So it was very helpful. It was very thought provoking and very, yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Right. So I want to add one thing over here, with respect to what Shreyoshi mentioned, that when you're looking at help, this whole application journey that we are talking about is actually an introspection stage, right? There's a lot. So what happens is, the most important aspect of going through this application stage is, I always tell this to people that your MBA starts there, right? That's when you start marketing yourself. That's when you start talking about yourself and highlight the best things about you. And the way you actually portray yourself is how the other person is going to perceive your application as, right? So the whole application journey experience not only gives you an idea of how to highlight what is more important about you, but also articulate that, very well in your essays. And I guess that's where, a mentor and an application, help comes into place when you're actually applying to any school anywhere in the world, right, Shreyashi?
Yes, absolutely. It's all about the introspection. Yeah.
Right. So how long did it take, Shreyoshi, from the time you actually applied? So I guess you applied in round two, right?
Yes, I applied in round two. That was December 15th. I had applied on December 10th. I cut it a little close, but I wanted to make sure that my essays were, as many rounds of iterations of. I didn't want to make. I wanted to make sure it was, perfect. So I had submitted it on December 10th, and then I got an interview or call on Jan 24th for an interview on February 2nd, I think. So I got
Okay.
around, yeah. Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about your interview experience.
Sure. So my interview was on Feb 2nd, and it was two panelists. There were two alumni. One was from Amazon, and another, I'm not sure, but he was slightly older than the other guy from Amazon. And it was quite, they were quite welcoming and they were smiling, and it was good. But then they wanted to know, see, for them, they want to understand that why do I want to do an MBA and how exactly will an MBA help me? And especially why ISB, why not any other school? So those were the factors that they were focusing on. And the other question that they kept, bringing back to me was, why an MBA now? Why don't you wait for a few more years? And, why don't you do it when you have 4 5 years of experience, get some more, you know, uh, experience and then come to ISB. And the point is you have to convince them. And in order to convince them, you have to convince yourself. And that takes some time and that does take some, the way you put it forward to them, they have to be convinced. And they will never show it across their face if they're convinced. So throughout the interview, I just kept thinking, am I doing it right? Is it going okay? But then I had to just push those thoughts aside, and I had to just, keep, putting my story to them and make sure that they understand what I'm trying to say. So yeah, it
Right.
was, yeah.
So one very interesting, thing that Shreyoshi mentioned over here to the listeners is, more than convincing them of why you need to do an MBA, you have to convince yourself first. I think that's an excellent point over here, and that is what most schools look at, right? So ISB wants to know that whether even you are clear that you are ready for an MBA at this point in your life, right? So that's a very excellent point. Shreyoshi,
Mhm.
that is definitely something. A lot of people think that, okay, we will go and think about it on the spot while we are
Yeah.
taking the interview and things like that. But in fact, one of the most important aspects that interviewers look at is your clarity of goal. right? So that's definitely a great input. So apart from aspects of understanding your clarity, did they grill you on anything else with respect to your work, or
Yes.
any extracurriculars or anything of that sort?
They did ask me about my work and they wanted to understand because one of them was from supply chain, but not from warehouse management. So they wanted to understand what kind of work do I do, how do I, and I had mentioned about my project that I had worked on. So they wanted to understand the project as well. So, and I was a little concerned about, because it's a technical role and it's not something that's very easy to explain. So I had actually prepared a flowchart just in case, in case they want to, if they're not able to, they're not convinced. I had a flowchart ready, which it's better to have it, at the back of your mind. But then thankfully I didn't need it. They I mean, I was able to convince them through words. So they did grill me a lot on my work experience because they want to know that whatever I've written on my in my essays, are they true or not. I can just make up stories, I can just write anything I want. When you speak about it, you have to be confident in it. And if you have done it, only then you can be confident in it. So there were questions on that and a few questions on extracurriculars as well. Yeah.
So again, one more interesting point that Shreyoshi mentioned over here is, uh, if you have done it, you will be able to talk about it, right? So one thing that you have to remember, especially when you're applying to an MBA school, is that be true to yourself, be honest. If you try to fib or furbish something in terms of your story or things that you've done, believe me that these are interviewers who have taken lots and lots of interviews in their life. They can smell if you are dishonest in anything, right? They'll be just be able to figure out the way you talk about it, or the way your body language is, or there are a lot of aspects of if you are actually kind of making it up, they'll be able to figure that out. So it's very important that be true to yourself, be honest. And if you have done it, they'll be able to they would know that you have done it, right? Because the depth at which and the clarity at which you will be able to talk about it is what they will be assessing you on. So that's again a great point, Shreyoshi. So Shreyoshi, as you understand, in ISB it's all about teamwork and leadership skills. So did they even grill you on those kind of aspects, trying to understand
Yeah.
what is your teamwork and anything with respect to your leadership skills?
So they themselves told me that we understand that since you have only around 2.5 years of experience, that you might not have taken any leadership positions. But they did ask me that they wanted to assess. So as a lot of you might understand, that leadership is not only about taking up the positions; it's about the qualities of a leader you have. That do you have the potential to be a good leader? So they were trying to assess me on those terms. And of course teamwork, they didn't drill me so much on the teamwork because I had mentioned that in my essay. But yeah, on leadership they were trying to assess the skills that I have. They were trying to see that if I will be able to take up such positions of responsibility in the future. So those were the kind of questions they were asking.
Right. So, to summarize what Shreyoshi mentioned, so a couple of aspects of what interviewers actually look at when they are assessing a candidate is obviously your clarity of goals. They want to, make sure that, you are clear on what you want to do. They want to understand your leadership potential very perfectly, as Shreyoshi mentioned. It's not only about leadership positions. It's all about, what other aspects have you shown your leadership traits, right? They would also assess you on how good you are as a person working in a team. So that is also one very important aspect of your profile. So they want people who are likable, right? So they want people who are compassionate. They want people who can work very well with the team. So I think that is also definitely something that they would want to look at. And obviously your Gmat score and your academic potential definitely comes up, because they want to make sure you can actually withstand the rigor of an MBA program, right? So that is also something that is really really important. So when did you get to know you got admitted, Shreyashi?
So I got waitlisted in R2. So they had introduced this new round this year, R3, right? So in the
Right.
mail, they said that a lot of us were waitlisted, and they did tell that they'll be reevaluating us with R3. So I was waitlisted at the end of February, and I got my result beginning of March that I have been converted into an admit. So.
Right, right, right. So this year, ISB for the first time actually had one more round, which is round three, and which is why they wanted to make sure that they evaluate post round three. So what next, Shreyoshi? So what is your plan? So when does your course start?
It starts on April 13th, so I am getting a very less, time. My last working day is next Monday, that is on 8th, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting like 2 days at home, and then it's all very rushed, but then I'm very excited about it. So yesterday we did a few of the admits did meet up, and it was a wonderful, seeing the diversity, seeing the kind of people who are joining. It was very exciting. I'm very excited.
Great. So, is there any pre-MBA work that you're working on? I mean, I know you hardly have time, but is there anything that you're looking at?
Yeah, they did send us a few courses to do. So accounting and statistics and maths for, in the MBA, that economics especially. So there are a few courses that they have sent us. So we have to complete those as well. So before we join. So yeah, so that we, at least the basics of, because we are not from finance background, so that, at least we are at par with, everyone. So.
Right, right. So, again, a point over here I would like to make is, there are some, so once you get an admit, I think there are some things like, Excel, learning how to use an Excel sheet is something that MBAs extensively use. So I think that could be something, that people can use. Other than that, obviously, like Shreyoshi mentioned, things with respect to finance and, understanding more about accounting and basic jargons, because she's an engineer, was someone with an engineering background, never even looked at numbers that way. And but since she's looking at applying for a business school, there is some aspect of your understanding that is required, because so Shreyashi, when you look at the kind of people who have got admitted, so can you tell me what kind of background they are? So different, you mentioned diversity, right? So can you tell
Yes.
me what diversity you saw yesterday at the
Sure.
meet?
Sure. So there were people from marketing background. There was one guy from ISRO. He is a scientist at ISRO who is almost having 8-9 years of experience. There were a lot of people who had their own startup, and there was another person who is working with Goldman Sachs and then moved to BCG. So they are very different kind of people. It's very unique kind of, but the kind of discussions we will have will also be equally, there'll be different points of view to it. There'll be different kind of outlooks to everything, because everyone is from a different, unique background. So yeah, there are a lot of different people. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. So, all the best, Shreyoshi. With all our heart, we wish you luck for your MBA, and I'm sure you'll do great in terms of your program. What I'll do is I'll just take up questions, guys. Whatever questions you have, you can put it on the chat window. I'll just take up these questions one by one. A few questions that were asked a couple of minutes earlier, because I got reconnected. They got reset, so I have some questions here, but if you asked your question 10 minutes or say 15 minutes ago, if you could just retype those questions, that would be great, so that I can look at answering those questions, right? So there are some questions over here which are slightly generic. So Surbi, Shreyoshi had 2.7 years of experience when she applied. I'm looking at someone's asking that can someone with a 5+ years experience have a chance at ISB? Yes, absolutely, you can have. In fact, if you look at the statistics of people at ISB, people from 3 to 6 years are the people who have maximum, the maximum people with that intake are at ISB. So obviously there are some with less than 3 years experience and many with more than 6 years experience, but the band that you're looking at is pretty much from 3 to 6 years. So I think Shreyashi was definitely exceptional to get in with that experience. So that's absolutely great. Does the company we work matters for the application process? Great question. So see, what happens over here is what is more important is the quality of work that you have done, right? The responsibilities that you have taken. However, there is a little extra edge if you have a brand name like EY, like Sreyoshi had on her resume, because, that implicitly tells that, they have done their due diligence to figure out the cream of the crowd, to make sure that they have, picked up since she was also someone who was recruited from campus post of her engineering, there was definitely some kind of filtration they did when they got that. Apart from that, the projects that she worked on, she mentioned she worked on really interesting projects and technologies on SAP, and the kind of client interaction they had. So I think it's all about the kind of work you've done. Slight, importance to pedigree will help. However, it's not a make or break factor, right? It's more about what kind of work you've done and what are the responsibilities you've had, right? So there's one more question which says, okay, how is extracurricular taken into account? So Shreyoshi, do you want to take this? So someone's asked about extracurriculars.
Yeah.
Do you any thoughts that you have on this?
Sure. So having a few extracurriculars are definitely important, but then again, it's not about the extracurriculars. So anybody can volunteer for an NGO, or anybody can, take something up, but it's all about how you put it forward. What did you learn from it? What did you do there? How did it help you? And how did you help others? It's not the um, it's not about the extracurricular thing that you have done. It's more about why did you do it, or the experience of it. That is more important, I feel, because I personally didn't have a ton of extraordinary extracurriculars, but the ones that I had, I made sure that I put it across in a nice way. I put it across in a way that they see me as a person who I am. Like, it's again about marketing yourself, as Srikala was telling. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. So one more question over here is I'm not sure what is said. I didn't understand. It says additional work experience. I'm not sure. So Shreyashi, any number on the number of tests you took before you took the actual GMAT?
so during my first attempt, I had given all those GMAT, the 6 tests which are available, right? I had given those. But since I had exhausted all of them during my second attempt, I did take up the Manhattan test series, and I had given the Manhattan test series, I think again 6. So before every attempt, I had given 6 to 8, I guess, between 6 to 8 mocks, not more than that. The more important thing is analyzing those mocks rather than giving the mocks. I think the mock is just to sit for those 3.5, 4 hours at a stretch. That will just build your stamina for that. But the more important part is analyzing it, analyzing every question, and making sure that you don't make the same mistakes again.
Right. So that's a great point over here. One thing I want to highlight, and the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of people doing, right? Especially people who are coming from a CAT background, right? They are used to the SimCats and mock tests and all that they have, the deluge of tests that they need to take before they actually take the CAT, right? However, for GMAT, it's slightly different. Very clearly, as Shreyoshi mentioned, the whole idea is to test on your endurance and your stamina of your brain working throughout the test, rather than just doing a bunch of 50-20 tests, right? The 5 tests that you take from mba.com, or maybe a couple of more tests, should suffice. The whole focus when you prepare should not be it's not that if you're not doing well on the first test, you will definitely not do well on the second test, right? You have to focus on more what went wrong in the first test, and then work on it before you actually take the second test. And another thing I want to share over here is GMAT completely doesn't work on any kind of fluke. What I mean by this is, a lot of people come and tell me that, let me just try and take the GMAT, maybe I get a high score. Believe me, if your mock test doesn't show a high score, you will not end up with a high score on the real test, right? It has to be, if again, based on our experience, when you actually take a mock test, especially if you're taking a mock test from mba.com, the GMAT prep test, the the difference in the score between, say, for example, if I take the mock test today and I get a 700 or a 690, and they take the real GMAT test tomorrow, the maximum deviation would be around 20 to 30 points, right? So you will never get surprised on the GMAT. If you're getting a 650 today and you take the test tomorrow, you will never end up with a 750, right? It will maximum be a 20-30 point deviation. So I just want to tell all the listeners over here, if you have taken coming from a CAT background, make sure you don't look at aspects of just taking random tests. What is more important is every test that you take, you have to analyze, you have to make sure you're doing well on that before you actually take the next test, right?
Yeah.
So there are a few more questions. Is OG, what materials did you refer? So Sunita, as Shreyoshi mentioned, she worked with the official material along with help from CrackVerbal. So I think that is pretty much taken care of. I'm just going through some questions. So I think there are other questions which are more very specific, maximum experience that ISB takes. If you go to their website, they say anywhere from 2 years to, I have seen students with 20 years also getting in. So I think it's more based on the quality of work rather than anything else, right? Cool. So I would like to take one more poll over here just to understand your prep status. People, if you could just put in what level you are in terms of taking your GMAT, especially for people who are taking GMAT or GRE. Have you started preparing for your GMAT? Okay, I have some people saying that, yes, absolutely, it's high time now. No, I'm still thinking, I need to start, taken already, planning to retake. Cool. So I think I want to, focus on something over here. We are at April now, great day, 31st March, end of year, financial year rather. What I would want to tell you is now is a good time to start preparing, because if you're looking at round one, so if you are all over here on this webinar, I want to tell you that now is the right time to start preparing if you have not started already, right? So because by the time you actually focus and take your test, it'll be around 3 to 4 months. So if you're looking at April, May, June, July, maybe July will be when you should take your real test, so that July and August you actually spend on focusing on your applications and you're ready with round one, right? So not that round one or round two are they are equally good on any school that you're looking at. However, since you're starting now, it's best to start now so that you can also mitigate some risks that you might have or delays that you might have based on personal or professional commitments. So for those 27% of people who are still thinking, I would say just start now. Don't delay the process. If it's on your mind and 2020 is the time when you're actually planning to take the test, start your MBA rather. I think you must start right away. So make sure that you start your preparation right away. CrackVerbal has both classroom programs as well as online programs. Do reach out to our experts that you're reaching out to through emails or phone, and do make sure you take help from them, right? One more question I wanted to, ask over here to people who are attending is there any other geography, that you're looking at apart from India? So if you could just put in a poll around that so that I get some more understanding of, people who are applying to Indian schools or US schools, European, Australia, Canada, right? So I know there are a lot of people who are worried about Trump. For people who are worried, don't worry about it. We can, help you understand what is going right or wrong in the system. So you can just reach out to us separately so that we can help you out with that. So yeah, I see a lot of people looking at Canada, Indian schools, absolutely, ISB and other Indian schools, European schools, Australia, Asian schools, great. Awesome. I see close to 50 people responded already. Thank you so much. I guess I've already taken most of the questions. There are some very specific questions asked with respect to placements and all that. Frankly, at this stage, it's not in the purview of this session, because we are talking to someone who's just got admitted and is going to start her course, 10 days from now. So I think placements aspects and all, you should reach out to the ISB panel, or maybe we will have another session of someone who's already done with their MBA from any of the Indian schools, and then we can talk about the placements and other aspects, right? One thing that I would want you to look at is the Complete Kickstarter MBA program. This is actually a $69 course, which is we have a coupon code called $1. Just go to gmatonline.crackville.com and look for MBA Kickstarter kit. Some aspects that you will see in this program is, why do I need to do an MBA? Why do I need an MBA? Some selecting schools of 1 year versus 2 years, North American, European, Asia Pac, Indian schools, specialization, profit profile fitment, and many more. I've just taken a screenshot of, a few top programs. So you can just go to this link and, use this coupon code to avail this at $1. So that, again, the whole idea of putting it at $1 is just to get serious people into this, into taking it. So just make sure, you do avail, right? Any tips for retakers? What I would suggest is definitely don't focus on doing what you'll already be doing. The focus should be more on analyzing your mistakes, trying to figure out what went wrong the first time. Reach out to expert. We can help you. You can send us your ESR at inquiry@crackverbal.com. And we can help you out. We can discuss and talk to you and see how we can help you too, right? So definitely there are aspects of how we can help you since we've been, working with students for so many years now. And, definitely that would be, of help, right? We've already discussed about what interview questions, etc. is asked. So, there is, so Sreyoshi, there's someone who's asking, was current affairs or case studies asked on the interview? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for current affair, they did ask me, it was not exactly current affair, but then they wanted to know if I knew, so I'm working with SAP, right? So they wanted to know what are the new things which are happening at SAP, anything in automation or, something related to work. They did ask a few questions. And again, I read the question, I think he's mentioning about case studies. There are a few people from, my batch who were interviewed who were asked a few random questions. It depends. So basically, if you have a post MBA goal of going into consultancy, they did tend to ask questions such as, how many autos do you think are there in Bangalore? Something as random as that, so that they think they can understand the kind of, thought process, because you are putting a consultancy as your post MBA goal. So you should be having a certain way of looking at things. So they did ask such questions to few people. Again, depends on your post MBA.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. So cool. Thank you so much, guys. If you have any help that you require, you can reach out to us at crackverbal.com. There's also a profile evaluation option. If you could just have a look at that. I see a lot of people asking very specific questions with respect to your profile. Just go to crackverbal.com/applications. You will see a profile evaluation option. Get in touch with us so that we can help you individually. And focus on, helping your, questions and, helping with this entire process. Cool. So thank you so much, Sreyoshi. And it was a pleasure having you here. Thank you for taking out time. I know this is, every minute is crucial for you at this point when you just have a couple of, rather, I would say 13 days exactly to, get started with your new journey and new phase of life. All the best from all of us here. And, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And all the best to everyone who's applying. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, all of you. You can reach out to us separately. And thanks a lot. Have a great Sunday. And, wish you all great luck. Thank you, Sreyoshi.
Thank you.